Okay, we'll call the meeting to order Tuesday, March 1st, 2022 at 6:01 p.m. Present tonight, we have Councilman Podeska, Councilman McComber, Councilman Wilden, and Councilman Carn. So we do have a quorum. I've asked Councilman Wilden to lead us in our invocation and Councilman McComber to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Our Father in heaven, we're grateful that we're able to be gathered here this evening as leaders of this community, and we're so grateful for our wonderful city and all those who live here. And we ask Thee to bless us this evening, that we'll be able to make good decisions for our current residents and those who will come in the years to come. And we ask Thee to bless our first responders and those in the military and those throughout the world, that they may be safe and protected. And these things we say in the name of Thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
The audience, please rise and join me in repeating the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Okay, we have a presentation from Strategic Energy Management participation.
I'm assuming you want me to talk to the
Yes.
For the record's sake, and I'm happy to do it. So, we've got some slides up here. I'm Matt Jensen with Cascade Energy, and had the pleasure of working with your team over the last 2 years to identify energy savings with your water system, with dealing with your culinary and secondary water system. So I'm on the slide there. On my team, I had Kai Krieger with Hanson Island Luce. You guys are already contracting with Hanson Island Luce, and so he had a lot of insight. And then there are two gentlemen here from Rocky Mountain Power, Lucky Morse and Jess and Doxy, to represent the utility, and appreciate them coming with us as well. Let's see, what's the best way to advance the slide? Oh, even better. Well, it hasn't yet. Okay, so let me talk about the program, Strategic Energy Management. This is a program that is funded by Rocky Mountain Power. So they invited us or asked us to help communities like yours find ways to be more efficient in your water delivery. So there was, I met almost just over 2 years ago, right before COVID started, so it seemed like a whole different lifetime ago, but Jeremy and I met down in St. George at a conference and talked about the program, and he decided to join as a city. So this is a program that looks for low and no cost opportunities of saving energy. So just doing what you're currently doing, but more efficiently. And so there was a number of things involved. We had workshops. This was a combined water and wastewater group that we worked with. So we started out having in-person workshops, and then when COVID hit, we moved those to remote workshops. So you guys almost hosted one of our workshops, but in the end, we couldn't do it on account of COVID. We did remote workshops where we taught about creating energy teams, and we shared common inefficiencies that we see in water systems, and we see them all over the place. And then we did, because of COVID, we did a virtual treasure hunt with your team. So we got Hanson Island Luce on the hydraulic model, us on the phone. We looked at the energy intensity of each of your sources. So we were looking at how much energy does it spend to create 1 million gallons from that source, from your wells or from buying from Central Utah or however you might get that water. And we compared those, and then your team came up with a list of opportunities they were going to pursue. And then after that, for about the last year or and a half or so, we've been working with them just to provide some accountability. Every month or so calling in, how are things going, helping them work through any technical challenges they might be seeing. Your team did great. Central to that, to the program, is that we created an energy model around your energy use. So we looked at historic water delivery and how much energy it takes for you to deliver water each month. And we built a model. And then as your team started making changes, we compared your actual energy use to what the model said you would have used. And that's how we came up with this to quantify this energy savings. And because that incentive, there was an incentive from Rocky Mountain Power for every kilowatt hour that you saved. That's why we're here today, is to talk about your team and the great things they did, share those results with the council and with the city, and then to present with you, to you guys, a check from Rocky Mountain Power, the incentive that you earned, or your team earned through their participation. So if you'll advance the slide, unfortunately, there's going to be a couple of clicks on this next one. So want to go through your team. You can just click it 3 times, that'd be great. The executives, might be 6, might think it works now? Still doesn't, well, did it work? Okay, well, as long as you click every time I do, it'll work, so there you go, it worked. So that's good. So I just want to go through the team. These are the people we worked most closely with. So of course, Jeremy was the executive sponsor. He kind of set the tone that this was something they're going to focus on. George was instrumental in getting his team aligned with the goals that the city set forth. I don't see him here, but he was a delight to work with. So I don't mind bragging about him since he's not here.
So we like George, and because he doesn't like to be here, he doesn't have to be here.
Okay.
Because then he'll stay in the city.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, well, just pass along my admiration. He was a delight to work with. And then we asked for a lot of data ongoing, and Sterling Reese helped us out with that. If you'll go to the next slide. So this is a kind of the overview of the time that, of the program. We started in February of 2020. Oh, how naive we were. And then by March, things had fallen off the rails. But we kind of spaced out the workshops. The treasure hunts happened about April timeframe of 2020. And then it ended up being just over a year, about 1 year and 3 months worth of performance period where we were measuring your performance. Go ahead and click again if you would, please. So some observations. Go ahead. So this is a graph of your energy use. That's the red line. And then I've got a few other things on here. The dashed line that goes way up and comes down again, that's the secondary water that you deliver in acre feet. Then there's a light blue line. That's the total culinary water in acre feet that you deliver, and that's broken into 2 chunks. Well water is yellow, and then the water you buy from Central Utah Water is in dark blue. And one of the challenges we had in modeling your system is that your growth is so fast, and the amount of water that you're buying from Central Utah Water is increasing so quickly that it was tough to get a model that really fit well. And then on top of that, the secondary water was impacted dramatically by how much water we had that year, whether it was a drought year or not. So it was a challenging model to make. But we showed this to the team and we talked about, does this make sense to you? Is this in alignment with what you expect for your energy use? Go ahead and click again. And then we went and broke down and said, here's your biggest energy users. Does that make sense? Now, what I found out afterwards, and I think I remember correctly, maybe Jeremy, you could confirm that Jacob's well is actually a well that you've given away. That was the well that, is that one still here?
That was.
Oh, okay. Well, one of the wells that was impacting your model ended up being developed and moving into to Lehigh, and it had a real impact on your total energy use. So anyway, we looked at these and asked, are these consistent with what you expect, how much energy you're spending? And if there was anything out of line, we talked about it. And go ahead, click again. And then here we broke down the energy per acre foot from the different sources. So the top graph is your culinary wells and your Central Utah Water, and then below that I've got some of your secondary water sources. And what we wanted to see was that the average annual acre feet, we want your highest, the green ones to be where you get the most water from. We want those to align with the lowest energy intensive sources. So your well 1, which was showing that it was most energy to create water or to deliver water, we want that to be only used in peak times. So we talked about these things and then use that to kind of set some goals and plans moving forward.
The bottom table's secondary water.
Yeah.
It's culinary.
Culinary is the top, secondary is the bottom.
Which makes sense because the cheaper wells are the ones that are lower in elevation, right? Less pumping. The ones up on the hill, you can pump more elevation to get it out of the ground.
And this didn't take into account any boosting. So we told your team, and I'll tell you guys that your team are the experts on the system. So, it was impossible for me to calculate the energy it takes to get water to someone's tap, but at least, to use this to inform their decision-making process. Go ahead and if you'd click again. So here's some things that the city did. Identified the most efficient water sources and then used those first. That was one of their goals. As it turns out, we've worked with Central Utah Water in the past, so we went to them and found out the energy intensity of their water, which was less than the energy intensity of your water. So additional acre feet from Central Utah Water actually lowered the overall cost of water to your community, even though you're paying for the water itself, but energy-wise. So one of the things that helped your model was the increased use from Central Utah Water as opposed to drilling additional wells here in the city. On the secondary water, there was additional water shares coming online for canals. Those canals, the water's already on the surface as opposed to pumping it out of the ground, and so there's less energy in using that canal water. So that was a real focus, is maximizing those canal contracts. And then there were a couple of spots where you had, your group calls them crossovers, where in a pinch, you would use culinary water to augment the secondary water. And we work with them to minimize the use of that, reduce those crossovers, so that the extra energy spent into making sure water is drinkable, that energy doesn't get wasted in putting the water on someone's grass. And then there was one instance where we term it looping, but there was a check valve that was broken, so water being pumped up was draining back down and then being pumped again, so water was going in circles. That was identified and fixed. And then the last thing, there's a number of things, but these are just the ones that I think led to the most energy savings, is that we talked about during the wintertime just completely winterizing the water, blowing the lines out and just completely turning off heat and everything to some of these secondary water sources, as opposed to what the city was doing in the past, which was maintaining those sites in a ready state and then heating the buildings all winter long.
Basically, we turned off the heaters in the winter.
Yeah, so.
In the well houses and stuff, which actually surprisingly we're spending more money.
Yeah, so these are just a selection of the things your city did, but I want to give you an example of some of their actions. All right, I'm quite nearing the end, but there's one more slide, so go ahead if you'll click. So the results. There's going to be 3 clicks on here, but I'll need you to do them one at a time. So,
One click.
perfect. So here is the model that we made. The lavender section to the left is the baseline period where we were trying to match the lines together. The red line is what we predict your energy to be. The blue line is your actual energy use. And then where that's different, we've totaled that up, and that's the green line coming down. In this case, down is good. And your city saved just under 600,000 kilowatt hours through the actions that they took to implement energy saving opportunities. Go ahead and click again. So there's the cumulative savings. We estimate that's about $22,000 or $22,500 of energy savings on an annual basis. And then the incentive from Rocky Mountain Power is, we might be off by $1, but it's going to be, is that the number we got? Anyway, 11,479 or 480 is what I think we have in the check. So that's the incentive. Now, I don't think this is actual legal tender, so it'll come in different means, but this is just for the photo op. Do one more click if you would, please. And that's just to show that that results is almost a 5% energy savings on the water system. So phenomenal job. It was a delight to work with your team. They're worthy of any recognition, non-public recognition you want to give them, because they did fine work. Any questions for me about the program or what the city did?
I think it's a great program.
Okay, awesome. Well then, if you'll indulge us, we'd love to get a picture with the council and the mayor and Jeremy and anyone else really that wants to be in it.
As Mark takes
Of the big check. Mark has to be in it for sure. Okay.
Stand back here. We'll stand behind. Want to go up there? You want to
Yeah, come on down. If you would, please.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
If I could take just 1 second here, from Rocky Mountain Power, we really enjoyed working with Saratoga Springs and your personnel on this project. It's been a really great partnership. And so we just thank you for your work and your interest and your efforts on this. I did want to take 1 second and introduce Jessen Doxey, our community manager that works with Saratoga Springs has recently changed, and Jessen will be the new community manager that's working with Saratoga Springs. So I just want to introduce him to you, so as he comes out and meets with you, you'll know who he is. So,
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You. Okay, we've got public input. Time has been set aside for the public to express ideas, concerns, and comments for subject matter not listed on the agenda. Please be respectful in your comments. Please avoid repetitive comments. Please state your name and address for the record. Is anybody here for public input? If you want to come up. Yep.
Jennifer Klingensmith, 287 West Ginger Place, Saratoga Springs. I'll be brief. I emailed you guys earlier about the Western Hills development, and so I just had an additional comment or two. But first of all, thanks for all you do. And these are my old stomping grounds. I haven't been here for a while. I've been off doing other things, but it's good to be back. So just a couple things. And I know you guys know this, but I just a nod to zone changes and how they're supposed to benefit the surrounding neighbors. I know that you guys probably got a fair amount of public comment on how this, no one feels like it benefits us and the traffic problem in that area. I can see it out my back windows every afternoon and every morning, and it is pretty bad. I don't have kids that go there anymore, but and you know, I see the street layout, and I don't know if there's anything that can be done, but just for someone who witnesses it a lot, it's pretty bad, just as the school is growing and enrollment is growing. And there was a lady who, not on the thread that I was talking about this issue, but a lady on a Riverview site, she witnessed something scary at the traffic, and so as a nod to her concerns, and I think it might enlighten you guys as city council members, I'm just going to read a paragraph from her frustration, because I think she got many supporting comments on her thread about scary things that these parents have witnessed while driving their kids to school. And so this is April Jacobson, and she said, "I almost witnessed something terrible this morning due to the congestion and traffic at the school. Has anyone emailed board members, the SSPD, or higher-ups in the Alpine School District about the mess? Have you gotten a response? I'm just wondering who I can send an email to. Something has to get figured out with the traffic. I appreciate all that Mr. D and staff have done to help the flow this year and to help people get through as quickly as possible. But the fact remains that there are just too many cars at the school at one time, and it has been affecting the neighborhood streets and roundabout that's near there all year. I was waiting several cars back to enter the roundabout to drop my kids off this morning, and there was a Jeep 2 cars in front of me. I was facing east, just driving down Aspen Hills Boulevard. The Jeep got sick of waiting to enter the roundabout because of traffic was moving so slowly. And the roundabout was blocked at the time, which happens every morning and every afternoon, so through traffic cannot get through. So the Jeep, jumped the curb before the yield sign and drove over the sidewalk and grass to be able to exit the roundabout and head south. I was horrified as I remembered there were 2 kids walking to school on the sidewalk just a second before that. As I looked to make sure they were okay, he came so close to hitting them that I almost had a heart attack. And she goes on for a while, but it is a problem, and again, not an easy solution, I'm sure, but maybe something the city could look into. The only last thing I'll say back to the Western Hills development is that in the staff report, the changes being requested to patio homes, the staff reported as slightly smaller lots. In patio homes, you only own what your house sits on. If an average home is a generous 50 by 50, that's 2,500 square feet, versus in the current zone that property is, that's 10,000 square feet. That's a quarter of the size, not just slightly smaller in my opinion. And that's how they're able to get almost 4 times the amount of homes as was originally planned 10 years ago or so when this was originally brought forth. So I hope that you guys keep those things in mind, and thank you for listening to me.
Thank you.
Jennifer used to be a reporter for the Crossroads Journal, and she spent a lot of time here over the years. So fun to see you again.
Quinn Beal, 168 West Arbor Drive. I echo what Mrs. Klingensmith said. She's actually a neighbor, a good friend of ours for many years, and a pretty awesome individual involved with the city, and appreciate her, what she's done. Appreciate your service, what you're doing. I do have a comment about on the Western Hills. In 2014, in communication with the city, we did receive a plat map. It was a concept at that time from Ron Johnson. And as residents, we looked at that, we loved it. It's like, hey, that will work. You know, it preserves the berm, which is an abandoned railroad area right there, and I thought it was just great. In 2016, we had a bike study that was done, or a pathway study that was done. And the number one priority on that study was that berm right there for that trail. And so the city wisely developed that, and it made it part of our trail system. It was a very important part of our trail system in the city. And then, of course, we have a new developer come aboard, and we've had a number of Zoom calls with them. We've actually spoken with, made public comment at the City Planning Commission as well. And it was definitely disheartening on August 21st, 2021, when the attorney submitted a letter to the city marginalizing our voices. It was disingenuous, really. And it's basically a slap in my face and in her face and all of her surrounding neighbors as well. So as what's been communicated before, there's definitely concerns with the change of the zoning to an increased density. We think it's highly inappropriate to do in this particular area. We don't want to just recreate, as that attorney said over there. Yeah, do we want to keep the berm trail? Absolutely. That was by design, by the master plan of the trail system. So we're fine with the current zoning. We think persons should have a right to develop their land, but according to the zoning. We're not an anarchy. You know, we just don't build whatever we want to build. We have laws that we abide by, and I think that's very important. But thank you for your time, and I appreciate this opportunity to give some comment.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. I do. No schools. No, just kidding.
I know, it is,
You're
yeah.
the one who signed up to do it again.
I know, sucker. Julie King, I reside at 1864 North Peppermint Place. I actually didn't come prepared to make comments, but there was kind of an awkward pause there. As the school board member who oversees the Riverview community, I'm fully aware of the current traffic dynamics that exist. I also, like Jen, live very close. Kids walk down basically a kind of an open pathway to cross Aspen Hills Boulevard past my house. So I'm very well aware of it. I also have happen to have a child who's employed at Riverview, and because of the traffic, she chooses to walk to school and not drive because it is faster. We've communicated with parents about encouraging more walking, but it just doesn't seem to be the norm these days. As far as commenting about ongoing traffic concerns in the future, Riverview is projected to continue to grow, so I don't see those dynamics shifting as far as student enrollment. It'll continue to worsen. And then I know there has been a lot of questioning about whether the current schedule we have where all of the students attend school and are dismissed at the same time will continue. It will, at least for a minimum of another year. So that dynamic won't change. And I honestly, I can't make a commitment one way or the other because we haven't been presented with information as a school board yet. But from what I am seeing, I am not sure that there will be a push to change the schedule back to the previous modified extended day to do the early birds and later gators. So I don't know that that will change. So I just guess want to communicate to you guys from my informational side that I don't know that anything with the traffic is going to alter anytime in the near future. So take that for what it is, kind of a thing.
We don't normally back and forth during public comment, but can I ask a question here?
And I want to acknowledge I came ill-prepared. So whatever you're going to ask me.
This is going to be very easy.
Okay.
Riverview is a walking-only school, correct? They're not a bus.
There are buses. We have some SPED programs, so students who are transported for our ED unit.
Okay.
So ED students are transported. The other thing about Riverview is because they have the dual language immersion, they have Chinese, a significant amount of children come from out of area that are transported to school by their parents. And so those, so the ED unit.
How big is that? How big is that 10% of the student population?
So, I mean, I don't have the numbers and
I don't expect you to. I guess my point is,
One per grade.
what can be done?
so there's 2 classes per grade level, 1st through 6th.
Okay.
So
What could be done to
assume like
encourage-
60 kids per grade level, 360 kids. So not half.
Yeah.
Let's assume it's 360 out of, I want to say they're tipping around 950, almost 1,000.
Okay, so maybe a third.
Yeah. And then I'm guessing we probably have in the teens for our ED.
I know that this school is not unique in traffic issues.
It's not.
All of our schools have bad traffic
Yes.
with the elimination of A and B. I get it. I guess anything I would say is just if we can do anything to encourage messaging from the school to have our precious little ones walk and not be driven. One more car helps getting it out of that intersection.
Yeah. And it's something that
And
we're
all of our schools are the same. So.
Yeah, and it's something that various schools are having various pieces of success with in messaging to parents in different ways. We have one school that is specifically working on like a PE thing where it's, let's see if we can walk around the world, and they encourage kids to walk to and from and things like that. I know that in the past, we've encouraged walking school buses where you have one parent and then a group of children where you kind of meet at a location and then the parent kind of helps supervise when there are concerns about safe walking and crossing and things like that. I know that each school is messaging that specifically, and I know that Riverview has taken specific steps for blocking off and changing like where the buses load versus where cars can go to try to eliminate some of that. But just the sheer volume of the number of students that are in that school, unless we have a significant, because even if we have all the kids who are local walk, we still have probably, 370 kids who are being
Bused or dropped
transported
off.
that are being, driven or bused. So.
Okay, thank you. I won't address the other stuff until we get to the business.
So I just have a quick
Yeah.
comment. As you're mentioning that you're not going to go back to later Gator potentially.
Right.
You just built a school in the South and you built it the old school style where you didn't account for the fact that all of your parents are coming. Are you going to be changing your models for how your flows work around the schools? Because I would have hoped that you would have maybe addressed that with the new school if you're not going to go back to it, because it's the same design, the same flow, and it's a mess down there. It's a mess everywhere. So maybe change your architecture, change your flow patterns of your cars. Maybe really take a good look at that on all your new schools.
So you're talking specifically about Harbor Point, right? I just want to make sure that we're talking about the same school. I think that one of the things that we've seen, like one of the schools that has the best dynamic is Springside. And part of the reason that Springside works so well is because the busing is done on the side of the school so that you separate the busing from the cars. And I think
part of that design, yeah.
right? And just where the school was placed, right? When there was debate about which way it would face and which street it would be on, because it's not on Schoolhouse, right? Where we thought it was going to originally be. That's good feedback. And one of the things that we're looking at as we design new schools is if we're going to stick with this model, going forward. We obviously do and knowing that potentially the dynamics have changed about whether parents allow their children to walk to school anymore, that we've got to take that into consideration if we're not doing AB and if we're talking about this being ongoing, that we've got to look at that architecturally.
Yeah, that's what I'm just saying. Maybe have the designers, because you guys have a set design, you save a lot of money because your design is set, but maybe it's time to reevaluate at least the flow of traffic and things. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you.
We can't do anything about that. The school has anonymity, just so you know. Just a little dig there at the end.
Anybody else for public input? Jeremy,
There's one more public input.
come on up.
You go first, yeah.
Just want to make a comment. There was a little flyer out there around the mail asking for input on things that could probably be better. Just one thing, maybe just check in the box, make sure you guys did it. Has anyone done a geological survey beforehand? As far as like planning and stuff goes, just to make sure there's not any mineral rights, because that could be a possible dispute between landowners and people going forward. Just something to think about. Places to start, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers or the U.S. Geological Service. Thanks.
Thank you.
Jeremy?
I was just going to add that one of the trails that you guys approved this year was finishing paving the trail behind Riverview. But I don't know that may increase people willing to walk. I know in the winter it may be not
It's
as
paved,
desirable. So,
Yeah.
and maybe I don't know if the school board knew that or the residents knew that, but that was, that's out to bid right now.
So your trail's going to get done. That's awesome.
Anybody else for public input? Okay, seeing none, I will close the public input portion. Go on to reports. Is there any reports from the council? Councilman McComber?
So just a reminder, if we can get out a message to developers, especially who are putting in new roads, moving a lot of dirt. Now that winter is coming off and it's getting warmer, the dirt gets lighter and it blows easier. Because in the winter, it just has it's a different consistency when it's cold. And the dust on Redwood Road, especially from Wander, is really, really bad. And it's even worse when you're now stuck in traffic and then it's all this dust dumping on you because you can't even get past it. You just have to sit there and let it dump on you. And then I also did notice specifically here on Crossroads Boulevard on the east end, the new development that's going in. Just to remind people to get the water on it.
Or don't build dirt mountains.
Don't build those dirt mountains and move unnecessary dirt all the time. There was one other thing, but if you can go, I can't remember right now.
Okay, Councilman Carn?
Yeah, I've got a couple things that I've been talked to by residents, specifically to the SSD neighborhood. Now that we're coming into spring, Jeremy, I think you know what I'm going to ask you about. The trail project that is a state-owned contract, has nothing to do with the city. Any updates that we can, I don't expect an update tonight because I didn't prep you, but any updates you can provide to us in the coming week on the status of the contract with the contractor who has still not been on site would be great, so I could report back to people who are talking to me. And then as far as the Utah Lake Commission report, I believe the ULA, Utah Lake Authority, has passed both chambers of the state. It's up to the governor to sign. I can't imagine he won't. So we're in for a dynamic change when it comes to how the lake is governed.
Mark, for our next agenda, can we get that update as part of the work session before? No, for Jeremy's,
No, on
for
the
that trail.
Trail update on that.
Question we are all
But
getting
a
hit with.
legislative update would be nice.
A legislative update would be nice during
Yeah.
work session too.
If you've got the update,
No. We would love a legislative update.
yeah,
Update on that trail.
sure.
Okay,
Stop pushing it.
there we go.
You keep turning it off.
Like the elevator button, right?
That's right.
So as we discussed at the retreat, we've lost faith in Acme. We've asked UDOT to release them from contract because we at this point have no more trust that they're, even going to show up, and if they do, that they're going to work. As you remember, they tried to hit us with $1 million change order last year before they even began the project. It has been tough getting UDOT to fire Acme. I finally did get an email today from UDOT's construction manager saying that Acme is willing to walk away from the contract but they had a short list of things that they'd like to get paid for before they walk away. And if we could please write them a letter saying that we release them from all claims. So,
Charge them for the damage they did?
So I responded saying, we will not be releasing you from any claims until you tell us what claims that you intend to thing. It was not extensive. They had a little survey that they wanted to get paid for and some herbicide and but they never, I don't know. But I responded saying, you have piles of debris that you've left out there for a year and a half that even if we let you from contract, you better clean that up. You have some disturbed areas that we need to stabilize. So, we had hoped to quickly terminate the contract with Acme, get a new contractor under contract, and finally get this project some momentum. We've entered into this situation where we're now negotiating the termination of the contract, which is delaying getting rid of them and trying to get a new contractor on board. So super frustrating. We're all very frustrated. I still think getting rid of Acme is the right thing to do. I don't think that we want them around. They've not shown that they're a group we want to work with. Because as you point out, we don't hold the contract. We're at the mercy of UDOT to actually go through their paperwork. Apparently firing a contractor is not something UDOT does very often, and so they're not very nimble about doing it.
The questions that I've been getting.
I did email Mr. Faggio.
Okay.
And let him
I saw that. Yeah, I was copied on that.
And let him know that at this point we have no time frame to proceed with the contract because we're still trying to get rid of Acme so we can get a contractor.
There is the state portion of that project,
There's
and
a
there's
new
our
project.
portion of the project.
Right, so we got funding for a new project.
Right.
Which would pave an additional section that is bookended by the Acme project.
Are we starting that this year?
We are moving very quickly with that. The first thing we did is we did a very detailed survey.
Let's hold off on that.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
yes, we're working on that.
Okay.
That's going to be coming forward here soon. But we're
Yeah.
juggling two separate items on that.
Our goal is to move very quickly on that project, and we were hoping to bid that project with the new money from state, along with UDOT getting rid of Acme and bidding the new project.
Okay.
That's still our goal. I could tell you that our time frame for our new funding project would be to try to bid that, obviously, this summer. At this point, not knowing and not having control on how fast it's going to take UDOT to get rid of Acme as a contractor, it's hard for me to give you any insight onto where that goes. Other than, as I pointed out, our goal is to get them at a minimum to clean up the mess they made before they walk off the site, get rid of them and get, someone on board that actually.
The short answer is we're hoping to see substantial work done on that trail system.
That's what we want, but again,
On the contract we can control, we
Right.
anticipate.
On the one we can control. Okay, all right, thank you.
As far as the UDOT one, we're working.
Thank you.
Councilman Wilden?
Just a quick update from the Utah League of Cities and Towns, and if Councilman Porter has anything, or Mark actually would have the best update. Appreciate Mark and Owen, they're up there every Tuesday and actively working in behalf of the city. The state, I don't want to get into the bill, but they're always working on, hey, let's fix the affordable housing. And I think the league's done a really good job of putting the data, or at least a plan to put the data in the right hands, because what the state has forgotten at times is we, as a state, issued more building permits in 2021, just slammed the prior record, and the prior record before that was 2020, and so the state's often, not Jefferson Moss, he understands it, just to be clear, but the state often says, well, and the developers say, the city's holding it up, the cities are causing the problems, and that data just proves the fact that we're not. And I think it's very relevant tonight. It's come up in other discussions that within Saratoga Springs, about 10, 12, whatever years ago, right now Saratoga Springs has over, 20,000 vested units that were not in, that haven't been submitted, but.
Right. We have in the residual, we have about 25,000 vested units, just under 25,000. We have roughly 8,000 that are in the development process somewhere. And we have about 2,500 lots that are buildable today. And that includes both single-family and multifamily lots. So I think to Stephen's point, the legislature is constantly talking about this housing gap, and there's a gap of 36,000 housing units. Well, if Saratoga Springs can close that gap to if we have 32,000 of those potential gap units, and all of the other cities' potential inventory were added to this, I think it's less of a pressing issue than perhaps it might be. But to Stephen's point, and I'll let him finish, it's a data gathering discussion.
Yeah, and I think the point of that is they even mentioned the league said Saratoga Springs would made the point. And so just to make the point, it's not, the cities are not holding up anything. And I think that data is going to help with that because often developers and others say, well, you need more density because we need more housing. Well, I think 25,000 in the pipeline is sufficient for a city our size, one city, let alone the whole state. And just the other thing, not speaking to it, but water, secondary metering, even though it's already done, Jefferson Moss is a great representative for the state and looks at solutions for the state without penalizing cities, and he's doing a lot on our behalf. So I don't know how much of that's public now, but just appreciation to Jefferson Moss.
Perfect. Councilman McComber?
I remembered my other thing. So I was wondering if we could reach out to UDOT and talk to them about the traffic flows now that Saratoga Road is closed. We're getting a huge amount of influx over onto Redwood Road and then Pioneer Crossing. And one of the big things I've noticed, and I'm just an expert on transportation, but I've just done this for 12 years, so I have a little bit of an idea, is I think that the light at Saratoga Road and Pioneer Crossing is on its old, when Saratoga Road is open, there's like 15 or 20 cars there trying to turn right onto Pioneer Crossing or go straight across to go into the Thanksgiving Point area, right? So what happened is none of those cars are there now because the road is shut down, it's closed, and so now they're all coming up, and so the light is staying super long for Saratoga Road, 2300 West, and it's the same shortness for Pioneer Crossing going across that. So if we could lengthen that, because what happened is it's getting all the way back, all the way over the bridge across the river, and it's congesting at Redwood Road now. I can vouch for that. Yeah. So if we could add 15 or 20 more seconds to the Pioneer Crossing Road, the light sequencing, I think that would make a huge difference because there's no backup going on the 2300 Saratoga Road. There's no backup on those cars. And you know what? Maybe they can wait one cycle.
We'll have Jeremy reach out to UDOT and make that request.
So, update that. I did. I was just emailing after you updated 2 o'clock.
Great.
And they actually emailed me saying, we've received a lot of complaints about eastbound traffic backing up. So we coordinated like that, and so I'm hoping tomorrow or whenever they can change the signal, you'll see immediate improvement. We gave them our closure dates are through the 21st of March, but please reach out to me if you don't see improvement in the next few days.
And if we see improvement, if we can go on Facebook and say, we proactively reached out immediately, let's get ahead of the drama a little bit. And my last thing is, since we do have our school board member here, I did have another thing. I've had 2 or 3 complaints. There's a light on Lake Mountain. They light their flag, which is great because you have to have it lit if you're going to keep the flag up overnight. The problem is the light is aimed right down Redwood Road, and I had some people say that it actually blinds them. So when you're driving southbound on Redwood Road, the light at Lake Mountain is so bright, this big floodlight, it's shooting down. If they could twist that, Lake Mountain Middle School, if they could twist the light so it's actually shooting east. It's on the west side of the school. It's this big spotlight. They just need to shift it so it goes more shooting east versus shooting north. And then I hadn't really noticed it. And then the other day, because I got the email, I was driving it, and it is really bright. So if we could shift that, that would be great. Thank you.
Councilman Wilden?
I just had one thing, a question. I know we had a number of follow-up items. I think a number of them were being addressed in business item 3 today, but one of them we had on a follow-up, just wanted to hear where we are, is reviewing curb cuts. If you don't have an update on it, it's fine, but if we could add that as an official follow-up item ongoing, so we don't lose track of it.
Yeah, I do. We've met with developers and we've met with the planning department. And so, yes, I apologize it's taken longer. I got more criticism for my proposed draft than I expected, to be honest. I thought I wrote a great draft, and so I got feedback from LEI, who's the engineer of record for like all the big developers. So I'm working on incorporating their comments, and then planning and engineering had a meeting on that. So I apologize. I'd hoped to have that to you sooner, but it is in progress, and I will have it to you. I just didn't want to adopt something that was going to piss everybody off, to be honest. I'm trying to resolve those fights before I bring it to you. So, yes.
Perfect. Okay, Mark, anything from administration?
We do have need for closed session. Thankfully, the legislative session ends this Friday. We're very excited about them concluding their business for this year.
I wish they went every other year.
We do have a lot of
Like Texas.
some big bills that I think are going to have some impact. So for example, some of the general plan updates that we're working on right now, we're going to need to take a step back. House Bill 462 has a lot of new caveats to that. And I think Stephen was alluding to this earlier, that bill, which last year was SB 34, which said, hey, you need to identify these things in your general plan. Well, the legislature realized we've identified them in general plans, but it's not forcing action. And so this year, they're changing this in House Bill 462 to say, no, it's not just identifying, it's got to have teeth. It's got to have implementation steps. And so if you look at that bill, and then there's an amendment that's coming that is going to make it so that it's much more implementable. And so with that, there's some good language that's being added that basically lets us get credit for what we've already done. So for example, the first draft of the bill said rezone to higher densities to allow for transit, densities and things like that. And our argument was, we've already done this.
Yeah.
We've already allowed this. And so some of the amendments are making it so that we can just say, we've already done this, and we can take credit for the things that we've already done, especially within the community development plan. I mean, we have so much, housing that's available there. We clearly can check a lot of these boxes off. Some interesting things with that, but it will be much, one of those change things. There's a lot of bad bills. There's some things that, probably aren't going to be too harmful for us, but it will be nice to have the session over. Looking forward to that being done.
I just wish it was every other year.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Mark. Okay, consent items. I will entertain a motion.
I move to approve the consent items 1 and 2 with staff findings and conditions.
A second. I have a first from Councilman McComber, a second from Councilman Podeska. Any further discussion? Podeska? Aye. McComber?
Aye.
Wilden?
Aye.
Porter?
Aye.
Harn? Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Business item 1, Western Hills Cottage, general plan amendment, community commercial to low density.
Mayor, Council, and a rezone along with that as well. The applicant is here tonight to request a rezone and general plan amendment. Just to go quickly through the property, it's at approximately 50 to 300 West Aspen Hills Drive. Susan Palmer is the applicant. The property you see on the map in blue, this is the general plan map. This is currently land use of community commercial. Logically, probably not community commercial usable at this point now. They're requesting that go to low density residential. The rest of the property you see there in yellow is currently low density residential. Just to brief, the LDR is 2 to 5 units per acre. The applicant's request right now for their concept is at 3 units per acre. And then the rezone would encompass the entire property you see in blue to go from R110 and agriculture to R19. The purpose of the R19 zone is the R19 zone permits footprint lots. This is the proposed concept plan. Roughly at an R110 density, you're around 3 lots an acre. An R19 density, you're around 3.5 lots an acre. The 1,000 square foot minimum dwelling size, we'll get into that later in our next item, but just as a briefing and just to let the public here know, state law has changed in which that we can only require a minimum of 1,000 square feet for a home. And so that's where the 1,000 square feet on the screen comes from now. Again, there are 2.99 lots per acre with 38 lots over 12 plus acres. Again, the footprint development, and according to Prop 6, we're at 73% single family detached in Prop 6, and currently these numbers are at 73.65. This is just the trail plan. One request the applicant does have is that the existing trail to Shea Park, I was informed just before my time that when this came through, the original Western Hills came through, the council asked that that trail be a soft surface. We actually have it in the code or in the development agreement as a hard surface. Of course, the applicant would like to keep it as a soft. That would be a point of discussion later on here. The Planning Commission did take this out of public hearing, and they do forward on a recommendation of denial for the rezone. So this will be a legislative decision for the City Council tonight.
Okay. Does the applicant have anything they'd like to say before the council discussion?
Yes, my name is Heath Johnson. I'm filling in for Susan tonight. Just a few key things. I'm just pointing out that the history, we've owned this property for 12 years. We originally built Aspen Hills Boulevard. We entitled the school, the city, or the school lot, sold to Alpine School District, the LDS Church. As mentioned, we also, with other phases, dedicated the trail, which is another discussion part, open space. So the R19 matches the neighborhood right next to us as far as units per acre, as was mentioned. We're 3 units to the acre. We just do the footprint. The nature of our site makes it a little more difficult. We are not multifamily. We are not high density. We're low density. Just to get an idea, these houses will probably start in the mid 600s. And so it is really challenging with affordable housing with lumber and costs. We're covering 3 bridges in the project. That being said, the staff actually recommended to Planning Commission to be approved because of that falls the master plan. And in the denial, it says due to negative impact, the footprint lots, is negative on the general welfare and decreases safety, which can be discussed. Traffic is an issue everywhere in Utah. Even Heber, it takes 4 times to get through a light in the evening. It doesn't matter where you live. We have growth issues. And so we feel very strongly that we've done our part in getting single family. We're not asking for high density, and so we would hope that you would consider that. Thank you.
Thank you. Comments from the council for discussion? Councilman McComber?
So I appreciate the work that was done and the efforts to try and figure out how we can get more houses in here. I was actually part of the original decision. I sort of hinted at that earlier. I've been involved with the city council for 12 years. One of the reasons we went with the R110, if you would, zone is because of the number of units. So density, high density, and multifamily are a different thing. So multifamily homes, we appreciate that this is single-family units, but it's still a higher density. It's not multifamily, but it's a higher density. You're looking for more cars, more garages, more units. And for me, this is already just a nightmare of an area, even with what has been entitled already. For me, we even talked about getting credit for allowing for higher density housing, multifamily housing, as the state legislature is requiring it. We did do that for transportation. It added the benefit to the city. We have a development over on the east side where we allowed for higher density housing because we have a transportation corridor, and it increased the benefit to the community as a whole. I personally do not see how this benefits the community in any way. I believe that we have vested rights for a reason. I also try and very rarely change densities after people have already moved into an area. I've been an advocate of this, and the council can know this. I always get the builders, the companies to put on their titles if you're going to have a baseball park near your house, if you're going to have you're next to a farm. You have, because people don't realize a farmer can shoot an animal on his farm, and so that is something that we put on the title, letting you know that you're living next to that. The people in this area, as per the public comment, actually did their homework, which is impressive because not very many people do. They don't always look to see what's going on around them. And they did do that, and I appreciate that. And so for me to change the game a decade later, it doesn't seem appropriate. And if I felt that this was really benefiting the city of Saratoga Springs and the greater community, I personally do not see how this benefits. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, Councilman Porter.
Yeah, I guess I want to treat these two items a little bit separately. You said something, Dave, in your presentation about the changing the community commercial. You said it's not viable. Is that the assertion of the applicant? Is that your belief as the planning director?
The general plan. Yeah, the general plan shows that property in orange as community commercial. Now, the good part of that north half is encumbered by a canal and an easement. Certainly tough to develop commercial. I mean, certainly the property to the commercial along Redwood Road could certainly expand into that area, maybe parking. But logically, would anything go commercial there? The way I look at it, probably not.
Okay. And is that a today thing, or is that you don't think it'll ever go commercial?
I mean, none of us could ever be 100%.
I
but
understand.
I see what's on the ground. I see the encumbrance of the canal. How would what's encompassed in that blue, how would that be developed as commercial?
Okay.
My guess is that when this general plan was put on there, it looks like there's just a swath, an even, length off of Redwood Road was granted. You look at the office zoning further south, which is going to come in a future request to you. Just to point this out, I know it's a different project, but you see the blue, the office down there. You've got a small yellow triangle that's low density residential. That's never going to develop as low density residential either, in my opinion. Pretty tough to. So I see the same thing here with that orange piece as well.
Okay. So, yeah, if it's never going to go commercial, then I guess, tentatively, I hate to see us get rid of commercial space, but if it's not going to, I'm not necessarily opposed to amending the general plan. Now, as far as the rezone, that is, to Councilman McComber's point, as a council, we have a history of, considering up zones when there's a benefit to the city. It was part of the North Marina was a consideration for zoning, and that brought an amenity that will have a lasting benefit to our city. I looking through the packet and looking at the application for a rezone, I don't see any benefit that's commensurate to the ask, I guess. So as far as the rezoning to R19, I'm unless something comes to light in this meeting, I don't necessarily feel that would be in the best interest of the city long term. And additionally, the Planning Commission took the unusual step of having a negative recommendation. That doesn't happen very often. And I appreciate the time and effort that they put into these things. They spend a lot longer looking at each of these applications, and they really dig into the weeds so that we can trust their recommendations. And so based on those two aspects, I'm not in favor of rezoning.
Councilman Wilden?
Thank you. I do agree with the comments around community commercial on the general plan, but I would prefer not to make a decision on that when we don't have any type of concept plan associated with it. That at least 1 of 5 here doesn't seem acceptable. And I think I've seen a request to this specific zone or this area now at least 2 times, maybe 3 over the last 8 years, and it's always a very similar story. While I recognize, similar to Councilman McComber, this may not be considered high density, but it certainly is a higher concentration of homes. And when you think about it, when we design streets and schools and other things, they're designed and paid for with impact fees when homeowners move in. So if we take and add additional density, there is an impact on existing residents because the roads, the traffic flow, everything has been designed to a certain standard. So if it's 200 homes or 30 more homes or whatever it is, it certainly does have an impact on existing residents who's actually paid to design a road and other things through their impact fees when they bought their home to meet certain standards. And then pushing beyond it, just unless there's a significant benefit to the city, is just detrimental. One thing I do want to say that I really do appreciate the public input. This is a great time for the public to get involved, is when it's a legislative decision. Often people sit silent and don't speak up, and then we get into administrative decision when zoning's already done and vested rights are there. It's too late. But so I really do appreciate the public input. I had a few reach out to me and say, hey, should we really come out and make a comment? And I said, absolutely, even though I didn't know the outcome, but I said, absolutely, I know how I feel about it, but resident input is always very much appreciated and helpful, especially when we're making legislative decisions like this. Thank you, Mayor.
Seeing no other comments, I'll entertain a motion.
Mayor, could I?
Yep, sorry, Councilman Podeska, and then.
Dave, just real quick question. Is there a reason why the current zone doesn't work?
Yeah, the applicant would have to answer that more directly, but obviously with footprint lots, you can move things out around a little bit better. Less.
But it still could be developed under the current zone.
Theoretically, yeah.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
Stroud.
This will be a question directed to legal, but then back to the mayor. I kind of see where this is going. Kevin, can the city council, they can act on the general plan. I'd like to do a map cleanup at least change the general plan from community commercial to low density residential. Can they?
I know we're doing a review anyway, the general plan amendment. Maybe that's better.
Take care of it then? Okay.
Mark, we could take a holistic approach as opposed to a piecemeal approach.
So Dave, real quick, your question, David.
Well, I was going to say, if the council could at least clean the map up for that part, then the piece that's zoned agriculture, they're requesting R19, could the council tonight approve it at R110?
Can I just say I'm not comfortable doing that because my focus was on, I know they're separate things, but I was tying it to the zone. I'm just not comfortable doing that on the fly.
And we're going to be cleaning up the whole map.
Okay.
So my only question was, do they have a previous approval for this area that is still valid and in place?
Not on the property that's, there are development agreements that apply to other property next to this, the open space requirements, but not the property you see outlined in blue.
Okay, thank you. That's all I needed.
Do you have something else, the applicant?
I just didn't, if we're not going to get approval, I want to keep our commercial as an option.
Okay.
And just so you know, we built the road. It wasn't, then we give it to the city as far as that road.
Okay. I'll stand by what I said. So.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion.
I move that we deny the Western Hills Cottage General Plan Amendment, Community Commercial to Low Density Residential Rezone, Agriculture and R110 to R19 Concept Plan and Development Agreement, Susan Palmer, Ridgepoint Management Group, applicant, dated today.
Second.
Okay, I have a first from Councilman McComber, a second from Councilman Carn. Any further discussion on the motion?
There is some findings in the staff report.
Oh, with all staff findings and or conditions.
Amended.
Okay, perfect. Okay, Podeska?
Aye.
Carn?
Aye.
Porter?
Aye.
Comber?
Aye.
Wilden?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. We have business item 2, the South Marina Beach Jetty and Dredging Award.
Don't leave. Public, stick around.
Well, those are
The good stuff.
those are the people who just lost, though.
As you know, we had the grant, the TTAB Utah County grant for funding a South Marina Beach. We've been working on that for a couple of years now. We put that out to bid. The first phase was just the jetty and the dredging. Yet to come still is the site work. Bid opening, as per the current state of the times, prices were eye-watering high. We had a series of kind of triage meetings to brainstorm how to salvage this project, and we think we came up with a pretty good game plan. I'll just give you, there's a more detailed version of my staff report, but I'll give you the brief, which is, at this time, we're recommending moving forward with the jetty because that just, nothing can happen without the jetty. You need the jetty to dredge, because otherwise it would all just sediment in. And we have a contractor, it happens that the low bid contractor was the same contractor who's building the debris basin reservoir above Lake Mountain Estates. So one of the reasons they were able to be the low bidder is they have a stockpile of material to build the jetty.
And it's now a place for it to go.
So this is very timely as well as them, right? If we don't move forward, we could lose that material. We are going to recommend that we award contract, but that we immediately execute a deductive change order to remove the dredging at this time, simply because from a budgetary standpoint, it's not within the budget. But that would allow us to move forward the jetty, stay on budget. We are, as you know, working with the county on a $5 million grant for the North Marina, which also includes dredging. So there's a chance in the near future we could package those two dredging projects together and get a better economy of scale. We also had the grant for the parking lot expansion. So I'm recommending we award contract to M&T Industries per the bid, but be aware that obviously we're going to immediately reduce the contract. They've already signed that deductive change order, yes, so they agreed to that. So if you have any more questions, happy to answer it, but there's more detail in my staff report if you want.
So, Mayor and Council, there is another alternative we can consider, and that is that we could move forward with more of this contract and amend the budget to fund the gap. Again, construction prices are raising.
What's the gap?
It's about $760,000.
800,000. Well, that's
the entire.
no. That's phase one. That's not with the dredging. The full contract on this is this current contract has no site work.
But it doesn't include moving the pay shack. It doesn't include.
This bid tonight is just the dredging and the jetty.
Okay.
So what Mark is suggesting was, on the next bid that we're going to put out, which is the actual beach, the actual turf, the pavilions, all that work, we had an option to stay on budget. We could have bare boned that. We could have gone through that and said, okay, because we would have only had about $600,000 left for about $1.6 million worth of improvements. So we could have stripped that down to the bare bone minimum. What Mark is talking about is, I think what we're proposing is we could come back to you with a budget amendment at the next meeting to add more money to the budget so that we can actually bid out the full project as scoped, which was the pavilions, a new restroom, all that stuff. That is not in tonight's bid award. But that is important direction for staff so that when we bid out the site improvements, we know what you want to do. Do we want to try to do the bare minimum and stay on existing budget, or do we want to add money and try to do the full thing? Does that make sense?
So we've done this over so many phases and things of that nature. It really becomes a question of, do we want to set the money aside and then get this project so it's finished, so we're done on the South Marina and we can start focusing on the north and the other stuff? Or do we try and apply for, it's going to be challenging applying for more funding for this from some of the other funding sources, and we're going to have kind of a half-finished product towards the end of that. So again, not necessarily germane for tonight, but overall, if you could give us some direction as to how you'd like us to move forward so that we know how much of this we want to try and finish at this point and how much we're willing to come back.
Do you want us to come back with a budget amendment in the future to talk about how to fund the full thing, or do you want to, after you decide on this, do you want staff to just find what, get some sand and a sidewalk, but that's about, you're going to have a very minimal.
Home Depot.
Councilman Carn?
Okay, I'm more than comfortable moving to approve business item 2 tonight with the change order to remove the dredging That's fine. I, as one person, very much wanted this project to be done. I'd like to know what the budget amendment's going to look like to finish the South Marina project with, personally, I'd like to see the phase with the turf on the west side of the parking lot installed. I'd like to see the whole thing done. I want to move on to the North Marina and focus on that with other things that are happening with Utah Lake Authority. I think we need to finish this, go to that other project.
And actually, those numbers are in your packet. There's a spreadsheet that shows you the different options. And I don't know if you want to make a decision on this and then talk about that, or talk about it now and then.
Let's just talk about the business item on the agenda and take the next one of the meeting.
Okay. Councilman McComber?
So I am okay approving this today with the amendment for the dredging, but I also don't want us to postpone and lose a whole nother season. So if that means that we need to do the dredging and then we need to come back with a budget amendment, then we need to come back with a budget amendment, because just like we lost, I mean, right now, this has been a great year for dredging and we didn't take advantage of it because the lake's so low. And we could have really benefited from this and would have been a lot cheaper than potentially when, because it cycles. We're going to get rainy years again. I'm not one of those doomsdayers. But so I would like to see that. And then in terms of a budget amendment, I absolutely want to see this finished. I think that it's something that has been talked about, having a beach in Saratoga Springs. I also think it shows the newly formed or to be formed Utah Lake Commission, is that what they're calling it? Authority. That we take the lake seriously in Saratoga Springs, and we are one of the few cities that truly embraces and actually and uses the lake. And just for those who here, this is the beach at the South Marina, as actually a sandy beach that will be available for swimming and pedestrian swimming and of that nature. So it's really exciting.
Councilman Wilden?
I am fine approving as been suggested as well. I would just ask when we come back, if we come back with a budget amendment, we just need to look at all the funding that's going on and not look at it in isolation, because we're talking about all sorts of money all over the place. And I mean, we can't print our own multi-trillion-dollar budget like the federal government. But Mark would like to. He's minting his own Saratoga coin.
This also reminds, because we're potentially putting the Parks Arts sales tax on the ballot for this summer, this fall, and we need to include this as the type of projects that will get funded from that kind of sales tax.
So I would just like to look at it comprehensively, because the potential change is a good significant amount of funding, maybe much smaller compared to some of the other things like a city library that we're talking about and other things, but I just think we need to look at it holistically.
And just to clarify, so currently the projected shortfall would be $767,000. So that would be
That's for phase one.
We'll give you more detail, but if we wanted to build the project as originally expected before the bid prices came in so high, that would be how much more money we would need to add to the budget to do that. But we can save
everything.
To do everything that we showed on those initial.
But not phase two.
That's phase one.
That's phase one.
And everything in the original budget project, not everything to finish the entire property.
We can look at phase one.
So what I'm suggesting, what I'm suggesting is we cut some of the amenities, we still get what we're looking for, and finish the park and be done with it.
And there's obviously still, as you're aware, that is projected until we have actual bids in hand.
Sure.
Okay.
Obviously right now, we totally got blindsided with this bid, right? So I think the engineer's estimate was a little over 2 million, and so the low bid was $1 million over the projected estimate from our.
Well, it's too bad we don't sell homes, because apparently one home and would cover the cost of $700,000 if we sold it, so, of a townhome.
You should become a developer.
Don't put that in the minutes.
Councilman Porter?
All right. I'm fine with passing this. When you do bring back the budget amendment, I would, to Councilman Wilden's point, I would, like to at least have the cost for phase two split out if we're gonna, I know there's an appetite to just finish this project, but we've already spent 4 million plus on parks this year. We need to look at the budget holistically when we make this decision. Make sure we're not, it's an opportunity cost. Any money we spend here is money we can't spend elsewhere. But yeah, that's.
Okay. Councilman Carn?
No.
Okay, then Podeska?
Just gonna entertain a motion.
Okay.
You were gonna entertain.
We're going to entertain it?
All right, fine, I'll
I'm not
move.
gonna take that from you. But no, I'd like to motion to approve South Marina Beach Jetty, removing the dredging.
No.
Oh, sorry.
Will be coming as a change.
Awarding the contract, okay. And for M&T Enterprises, Resolution R22-10, dated today.
I'll
We have a
second.
First from Councilman Podeska, second from Councilman Wilden. Any further discussion? Podeska?
Aye.
McComber?
Aye.
Wilden?
Aye.
Porter?
Aye.
Carn?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. I do believe we spent longer discussing it than it took to bid it. So, thank you. Code amendments, Title 19, Chapters 1902, 04, 05, 06, 08, 12, and on.
Can you read that all again?
No.
Mayor and council, this is a request for various Title 19 changes. Now, the Planning Commission did review this Thursday night. You were sent a revised document on Friday of the changes. There are some highlighted areas. Those were things that legal added Thursday morning. So that's different than what you looked at the work session. And so those are the highlighted items. The Planning Commission does forward a positive recommendation. They would like to add something in the language for the turf section, artificial turf, that the turf be maintained in a good condition. If you want to give us direction, we can come up with something, but they want to have something in there talking about that if artificial turf is approved, that it be maintained visually,
So like,
whatever.
you're supposed to mow your lawn? No, I know what they're saying,
When
but
it fades, when it ripples, when it blows
Yeah.
away.
it's just kind of the same
Doesn't blow
standard
out here.
exists for regular lawns.
So,
Out here, so it'll never blow away.
so with that said, just here on the screen, so at the last legislative session, 2021, a bill was passed which prohibited cities from enforcing certain standards on single-family and two-family. And so one of those is that we cannot require more than 1,000 square feet on a dwelling. So that is a change as well here in that you have before you. And also, we cannot require any architectural standards for single-family and two-family. Now, we really didn't have much in the way of single-family. We did on two-family. That's now redlined out in the code as well. That came from the 2021 legislative session. So we have other changes which we have.
Before you go on, just
Yeah.
back to the 1,000, that's the minimum dwelling size? or
That's
is
the
that-
maximum we can require.
That's the,
Maximum, minimum.
Yeah.
got it.
We can't require.
We can't go higher than that.
Now,
So theoretically, someone could build a 1,000-foot home per state code in an R140.
yes, now there is the provision in state code which says at a time, well, could we do it at a time of rezone? Through a development agreement, you can certainly put additional standards in a development agreement, but that would have to be at the time of rezone. So if the zoning is already in place, if somebody's zoned R110, right now they can come in and do 1,000 square foot homes, excuse me.
That's just worded wrong, because it says a 1,000 square foot maximum, minimum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No.
Well, and that's not in the code here anyway.
right.
Someone is certainly welcome to build larger if they choose.
Can I just ask in the presentation in the future, when we have things like this, if we're doing it by state code, let's just put a blurb somewhere in our packet that we're doing this via state requirement, because my knee-jerk reaction was something totally different. I thought, Kevin was trying to slip something through again.
He was punching the wall and
You got his attention.
So that's helpful, and probably it would have eliminated questions that I asked over the phone with Mark, so.
okay. Other, okay, Stroud?
So various changes there. One thing that, as we've looked at through the process, In 190608F, Roman numeral 5, we already list the landscaping percentage elsewhere in the code. We have the 25% here as well. We thought we'd strike that and just have some sort of language as required elsewhere by the code. That way, we don't want to have the same requirement in two different places. Right. So that, and then 1908-036, we got to thinking this, discussed this with Fred after Planning Commission, to include, when we're talking about the home occupation parking, it talks about a vehicle, and I asked Fred after the meeting, would we consider a trailer a vehicle? And he said, no, we probably ought to add that as well. So if you go forward with the parking.
I think to add to.
I can wait till we get to 1913. I was going to clarify, David had mentioned that we had made some changes Thursday, so there were a couple changes that needed to be.
Yeah, let me drag that over now.
One was to the definitions that would help enable the later changes to the code that planning was making. And then the second was in 1913. I can address that when we get to it. David, just to.
So I guess do we don't need to go through with anything, or you want to hit with what Kevin's got right now at this time? Okay. So Kevin, you still want to hit the yellow, or do you want to go to 13?
Well, the discussion was, does the city want to allow this type of use in the institutional civic zone? And to allow that in that zone, we'd have to make the changes to the definitions and add in that section, or add in to the land use table that's a temporary use in that zone. So that's up for discussion if the council wants to approve that.
Okay.
And again, that would be tied to rezone. We have very few properties rezoned institutional or zoned currently institutional civic. So most properties that would be tied to rezone.
Okay, Councilman McComber.
So schools already can do this, so they're institutional and we can't control it. So really, we're talking about city land, right? And I think that as long as it's temporary, I'm hesitant. I was hesitant when this was first brought to me. I talked to Mark about this, but it's temporary. It's meeting a need, a necessary need. Is also something that we could then reconstitute or re-leverage the building somewhere else if we had to in the future. I don't like spending money. Like, I hated how Pioneer Crossing and Redwood Road kept changing, and then they kept spending all that money just redoing it, right? And so in this situation, I feel like it is probably the right course. And I just did also say that I want to make sure that, I mean, obviously we have to meet ADA standards and different things, but just let's put a little bit of effort as a city in making it look relatively nice. And so it's not an eyesore. We have this pretty new campus. Yeah, maybe, right? But just like, we could do like an overhang, like an awning off of the front door. That actually helps with weather when they open the door and stuff. But I don't know, we could do something just to create something that'll look a lot better for the next 3 to 5 years. So, thank you.
Green turf on the patio.
Putting green.
As long as the putting green, I'm just kidding.
That's right.
And if you change your mind, you can deny the rezone when the city brings the rezone.
Councilman Wilden.
This will take a rezone as well to that property.
Rezone that.
Yeah.
I agree with Councilman McComber. Do whatever we can to clean it up. I think that's great. You know, one of the things I was looking at, well, if this is just city property, why call it temporary? Because then we'd have to extend it 6, 12, however long it takes. But it's not just city. It actually includes county and state. And so I think it's a good protection to have it temporary so that we don't have
throw something on there where they're salt flat.
Yeah, or the mayor can't park his double wide
Pretty
there
much.
again.
I have a putting green on the patio.
The mayor's office.
You and your putting greens. The mayor's office.
So I'm supportive of that, and Kevin, I appreciate you throwing that together like you did. I think it's well written. The other question I had, maybe not directly related to this, it looks like we're changing and Dave, maybe you already addressed this, but the minimum setback requirements under table 1 and 190410 from 20 to 15.
Just an idea for obviously your consideration out. A mixed use It's supposed to take on the air of like a walkable type. Now, buildings right now can go 15 feet now with an uncovered porch. The main part of the structure then have to be at 20. I thought, well, let's get rid of the 15, let everything go to 15 in the front to at least bring on, your planning 101 is you have buildings closer to the sidewalk, pedestrian access, it becomes more walkable. And so that's the only reason for that being in there. Now, right now, that would probably should be distinct between residential and commercial. That would have to be changed as well. My intent was only to have that as residential, not for commercial.
Well, and was this based upon feedback from development community or anything like that?
It's just planning theory, things we learn.
Okay. Well, I mean, without understanding the full context, I would prefer that we don't go that route. I certainly, if there was a developer need that was, I use need loosely, right? But if there was a developer ask or request that really made sense, I think that's certainly something that I'd be open to consider. And then we added a star on the front. Like
it would delete, if that part is not approved, then it goes back to the original asterisk that were there.
Okay, so the stuff that's stricken out is you could have a porch that could go up to 5 feet.
Yeah, it would
the back.
Yeah, it would just go back to what's in there now.
Okay, so the asterisk was actually being stricken. Okay, I thought it was being added.
Yeah. And it also gets, we also look at it, and I look at other developments in the cities where some residential structure we can go to 11 feet. Those are in community plans. Yeah, that may be a different animal. But, it's just a thought. This is what, we learn in school. It's what we read in our planning journals. Obviously it's not something that, I'm gonna, as my hill to die on. So it's just for a point of discussion. And if it's not see the need, then great.
Oh, great, I get to make the long motion. Last item, I think you already addressed it, and I'm going along just like Councilman Karn, so I appreciate I'm so long-winded on things. You mentioned where it talks about all roofs on 2-family, 3-family, multifamily. Why are we striking 2-family all over?
Because that's the state code.
Okay, you did mention that. Thank you. That's all I had.
Okay, Councilman Porter.
All right. My question is 12 parts, and there was a couple things. Looking at the table 190411, the dockless shared mobility device deployment. I understand you just put permitted in all of the commercial zones. I think we may want to exclude the public school bus lot zone. I don't know that the school board would like dockless motor scooters being deployed in their parking lot.
That's how she's going to get to work.
So, well, they can drive there. They just can't deploy them there. See, so that was just a minor thing. I have thoughts. I mean, I don't love our mixed use zone anyway, and so, I don't know that what the changes here are doing anything to improve what type of products are being proposed there.
If I could just jump into that, I agree. I'm not a fan of the mixed use zone either. But if you recall the project that did come in, the 77-foot right-of-way separates the residential and commercial.
Right.
So that's one of the items there, at least.
No, I do appreciate that, and I do appreciate the fences not separating the uses. But I might like to strike the last half of B, the private residential patio areas. I don't. If we're trying to get a true mixed use, I don't know that they're not going to have private patio. Like, I just don't know that that's going to be it. I don't want to encourage them to have private patios because that's not really a mixed use development. Does that make sense? It makes sense to me anyway, so.
Kevin, you had a comment?
I can wait till,
Okay.
I just wanted to clarify 1913, the changes that came in, because I want to make sure that council, I want to make sure that this is the direction that you wanted me to take on this issue with the public utility easements. First of all, as I looked at that section, there's a couple things it addresses. One is that city has had a long-standing practice of keeping our city utility easements separate from public utility easements. And that's helped us keep these conflicts from occurring. Conflicts still happen with utilities, but this has helped us quite a bit. So the first paragraph that I added there codifies that. I don't think we've ever actually put that into our code. And then the second change pertains to what happens with public utility easements in common areas. And what happened basically is that there's a telecommunications provider that went up in Wildflower and got an exclusive easement to go in their common areas. And what that meant for the city, and this happened to Lehigh City as well on Traverse Mountain with the same provider, what happened is that amounted to basically an exclusive right to serve for that one provider. And the reason why is because the public utility easements usually go around the exterior of the lot and don't extend into the common area. And that's just been kind of and I talked to Lehigh, and Lehigh is going to be doing the same thing that we're doing. But this requires the developer is building anything with common areas where there's a separation there between the public utility easement and buildings. They have to show the public utility easements extending to the building. So this codifies that, and we'll catch that in the future, knowing that that's the kind of tactic that this one provider is trying to use to get exclusive rights to serve. So unfortunately, right now, for those projects that don't have that, there's probably not much that we can do because we didn't have this in code. So this now protects the city and helps those residents and will prevent that from happening in the future. I have been communicating with CenturyLink, who's concerned about this issue in Wildflower and has dealt with the situation in Lehigh as well. And they're going to propose some ideas for me to present to the city for how to address that. And we'll do everything we can in Wildflower to help stop that from happening. But I just want to make sure the council is okay with that approach. Figured you were, that you'd want to provide more options for residents for telecommunications and internet services. And
avoid monopolies.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm fine with that. Continuing, the artificial turf, I appreciate the planning commission's suggestion. I just think it's too subjective. It's unenforceable.
And so
has to look nice.
So we discussed with staff earlier today too,
says who?
what could be good by one may not be good to another. So
who's the judge? The one 191206 1G1. It's right there. Why are we changing the single access from 50 to 30?
This is fire code, so it matches the estate and the city adopted fire code standard.
Okay. All right. We've always required 50 before, so I was just surprised to see that we have a different requirement.
And then this obviously came in with input from Fire Chief Campbell.
Okay. I think we're going to get into the scooter discussion more as a single item, or do you want me to talk to it now? All right. Most of the stuff I'm fine with. Let's see, I'm trying to get down to the. Okay, so 192806 is way down at the bottom. The last section. Yeah, the contract-based system for providing dockless. We reserve the right to adopt a contract-based system, but we don't specifically say that's what we want to do. I'm one of 5, but my preference would be that we do adopt a contract-based system. If we need to add a line in here somewhere that says that that's the way we're doing it, or change reserves the right to is using the right.
City shall.
Yeah. I discussed this at length with Mark. He managed to talk me out of one change that I would like to see. At some point, I would like to see it open to more than one company. I don't like declaring a monopoly. But he pointed out that while we're ironing out the kinks, maybe only ironing them out with one person only being contractually obligated to one company, and being able to work with them to find the sore spots and fix those before we open it up to others.
And Lime Scooters is already in discussion with us. I emailed with them last week, and they want to meet after, I
Right.
said we're going to council, and they want to meet this week.
That. We're going to want to do probably a proposal process, not just enter into negotiations with them.
I would definitely agree with that.
Well, that's how you do it in cities, because then you can have a single provider, but you open it up to everyone. You have a
Right.
bid process.
So anyway, those were the main ones. The only possible change would be I'm trying to remember number 3. That might be something that we want to reserve to the city council, determining the number. But I don't. If people, I don't feel strongly enough to vote against it. Number 3 is designating the city manager as the person who determines the number of dockless operators in the city.
If you want that, I don't care. I mean, it's.
Right. That was the response I got this morning. I was like, whatever. So.
Well, this motion's getting complicated, so just put whatever.
Okay, so let's also, are you making me do that? Are you making me do it now?
Whatever councilman's 2 to the right of the mayor.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, but this would just be,
No, he's talking about the city.
that would be reserving it to the city council to decide how many people do it,
Yeah.
rather than it just being an administrative decision. So, but yeah. So those are my.
Okay.
There are other. Oh, sorry. That was almost my thing. There are other things that other cities have done that I've seen that have been good practices. But given that each city is a unique situation, I would like to, having designated drop-off areas and stuff to keep the clutter down. But I would rather wait to see if it's a problem before we start added regulation. So.
Okay, Councilman Carn?
Okay, I'm good with all the changes that we've mentioned here. I look at this scooter code as kind of the base, and we negotiate the contract, and I really look at the contract as a protection for us, not the company. We've got things in here like we can impound scooters if they're abandoned or left improperly. I think our contract should have a fee for those kind of things, potentially, to store their equipment that we had to go pick up. Right. So, we need to have some stuff in the contract, and I do want to do a single source agreement for 1 year as a pilot. I frankly don't know how this will work in our city, being how we're so long and skinny, and who's going to jump on a scooter in Harvest Hills to go to Talon's Cove? It'll be interesting to see how this works. But I think this is the right step, and I'm good with the way it's written. I've reviewed all this with staff, and I'm good.
You can golf Talon's Cove on the scooter.
Not on those scooters.
Okay. With that, I'll entertain a motion.
That's a will do.
Councilman Porter helps me along on a couple items. I move that we approve business item 3 as stated on the agenda with staff findings, also striking the reduction in setback from 20 to 15 in section 190410, so that remains at 20. And then remove, what does that stand for?
Removing permitted use.
I'll remove PSBL from table 190411.
As a permitted use.
As a permitted use. Thank you. And then down near the bottom, that doesn't help the motion at
We
all.
also need to adopt his changes that he sent us.
Including changes provided by our city attorney. And then also changing, I gotta find that section, it's 192806, section 3, removing the city manager designee from determining the number of dockless, shared, et cetera, to the city council.
Oh, and change reserves the right to shall.
And what section is that? 192806, number 1, removing reserves to the right to shall. And I believe that is it.
That's it.
I did have the two at the beginning about the 25%, where we make that conform to the other section of the code in the turf section.
And also including changes presented,
And then-
referencing the removing 25% minimum to referencing other.
And then trailers being counted as vehicles, we can work on the language, but if we got your direction on that for the home occupation.
Trailers being a vehicle, yeah. to work
Yes, adding trailers being a vehicle.
Perfect. Okay, I have a wonderful first motion.
That was a good
Councilman
one.
Wilden.
Second.
Record
I have a
books.
second from Councilman Porter. Any further discussion? Carn?
Aye.
Porter?
Aye.
Comber?
Aye.
Wilden?
Aye.
Podeska?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. We do have need for closed session, so we'll take a short break and then jump into
We
it.
move while we're here or do that?
So
later?
made.
Oh, yes. I'll entertain a motion for closed session.
So made.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Fourth.